Okay, welcome everybody to the donuts or gifts-ish with the principal today. Um, this is our agenda. Oh, this is our agenda. Not bread, read. I don't know where the bread. Lots of mistakes today. No donuts, and now I can't spell. Read across Brisbane Elementary is what that's supposed to say. Reading tools with Ms. Johnson, our librarian. She's going to talk about that. I'll talk about conferences coming up, report cards, and growth mindset. And yeah, would you mind pulling it? That table's heavy, or that bench is heavy, so thank you. Okay. So read across Brisbane Elementary. It was kind of inspired by this Sunday, which is Read Across America. It's a day that's been around, I don't know for how long. It's been around a while. And it's basically a day where reading is celebrated. So it was actually, I was debating whether I should say this, but I think I should just say it. So it was actually inspired by, or it was placed on March 2nd. I don't know if it was inspired by, I don't know how it started, but it was placed on March 2nd because that's Dr. Seuss's birthday. And of course, he's, the famous children's author. And, when I was, a young teacher, and even when I was a young parent, I loved Dr. Seuss. And then many years ago, I learned that Dr. Seuss had written some books that many people consider racist. And that's always challenging to come to well, what do we do? This is a person who is, revered in our culture. And yet I don't like racism. So how do I do that? And I think we kind of encounter those situations a lot throughout, if you have a really popular singer that you like, and then you find out they do something bad, what do you do? So, it's hard when, modern times kind of looks upon the past and sees things in a different lens. But I think, this, while it's, it happens to be on his birthday, I still think the mission of Read Across America, which is celebrating reading, is something that's really positive and we need to embrace. But I think it's also important to note that where this came from and kind of the history connected to it, so we can move forward in, the most open way. And I think even, if you might want to have a conversation with your child about this, I think that's important because kids need to understand, things are not just always black and white. So I'm just kind of offering this as some information to you, and you could take that in how you want. But ultimately, today is not about Dr. Seuss, or next week, I should say. It's really about celebrating reading. So in the last several newsletters, I've put, facts about the importance of read alouds, thanks to Ms. Johnson, our librarian. She gave me those. So next week, we're going to be celebrating reading in the classrooms. So all of the teachers have invited their families to come and read. And I know probably there's a lot more families that wanted to read than could, but we can't have we can't just cut out, the curriculum. So there's only one slot a day or so for reading. And some of those slots I've kind of taken because I've invited, our superintendent and our board members and various people that will be filling those slots. So next Monday through Thursday, we're going to be celebrating read alouds, and as one way to kind of inspire and celebrate reading in all of our classrooms. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay, and now connected to reading, we've got Juliana.
Can I sit? Is that all right? Could I sit? So
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, yeah.
And they can hear.
They'll be able to hear you. That's fine.
All right. Morning, everybody. My name's Miss Johnson. I'm Juliana, and I know a lot of you. You've been so supportive as parents, and we thank you. I mean, we're so thankful. You're doing so much with your kids, and I'm thankful to be here with you guys. I've been here quite a few years, and I've observed some things, and some of you I've talked with just on the side already, just about the importance of reading aloud. And one of the things that I first saw was, I saw the kids, I would ask the kids, you know, do your parents read aloud to you? And the ones over the years who have had their parents read aloud regularly are the ones who are going on, like, to some kind of career that they really enjoy or they're interested in. I mean, there are chemists and there are mathematicians and there are artists and there are kids in drama and there are dance, but I could list them. But I know that each one of them, the parents were reading to them regularly at home, right? So then, you know, the teachers have 500, they have like about 900 hours of instructional time a year. As parents, and I'm also a parent, as parents, you have about 7,000 that you can put into those kids for their literacy. So you can do as a parent a tremendous amount for your kids, maybe your neighbor kids, that will take them on. I had one child the other day who, because I do ask them regularly, and I said to him, so do your parents read to you? Because he's interested in a lot of things. He said, I said, do they read to you? He said yes, and I'm sorry. He said, I said, do your parents read to you? He said, no, he said, I read myself. Now he's in the early grades. And I said, well, he said, I'm reading to them. And I said, oh, so what are you reading to them? And then he said, well, he kind of went, and he said, well, sometimes we read together. And I said, well, what are you reading? And he said, oh, my kiddie books. Okay. So that means very elementary language, right? That they're working on, and everything is put on him. It's put on him, and the poor child a child will often not know what those words mean. So if they have never heard the word, they can't read it, or they won't know the general meaning of it. So when we read to them at a much higher level, we find books that are much higher. And I'm talking about, maybe you could read to a kindergartner, a level 6. You can go to the public library and have the librarian give you some classics, a level 6, and read chapters. Read chapters. If you can't read every night, you read once every 2 days or 3 days, a chapter, something they're interested in. I mean, you can talk about things like Treasure Island, Kidnapped. You know what I mean? Something that grabs them, something they cannot wait to hear in the next chapter. Winnie the Pooh sounds elementary, but actually it's brilliant English, brilliant language, use of language. So other thing I've seen is that children who have their parents read to them at with books with much higher level, and the children maybe not going to understand 100% of it, but does that matter? No, because they're hearing the sentences, they're hearing the language, they're hearing that whole sentence or that whole paragraph, and then 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years later, they have to write something, and I've seen this. They have to write something, and do you know what happens? It just comes out, and they don't know where it came from. But it's like when you invest in reading for them, reading aloud to them, you are giving them a treasury inside that they are going to be able to use later. So it's not wasted time at all. You're building up a bank for them that is giving them all the tools and this amazing storehouse that they're going to be able to pull when they need to. So I know that many of you are very, very busy, and I understand that. We have two tools that you can use if you need to, and this is another thing that people do supplement with. So there's always audiobooks, and a lot of parents, if they're in the car, they'll put on audiobooks. If it's a rainy day, they'll get the crayons out, they'll get the Lego out, and they'll put on an audiobook. Now, the child is listening to those stories, and they're doing other things, but they're listening to that language, and they're hearing this beautiful language, use of language. And again, they'll absorb it. So we have tumble books, and it's in our it's the PTO paid for it. It's part of our I'll give you a sheet, and you can access that, and you can go on to some place called Read Alouds, and you can just click on it, and the children can hear the stories, and then they turn it off when you're done. Say 15 minutes, they turn it off, and then they want to hear another chapter the next day or whatever. If you have a nanny, you have a caregiver, this is perfect. If people aren't first language learners, it's perfect because they're hearing this use of language. So we have tumble books. We also have, through our public library, we're very fortunate, Hoopla books. It's an audiobooks, and you can go on and you click a kid-friendly button so that you're only getting things for children. So that takes care of that. And then you can go on and get hundreds and hundreds of books for that, for them to listen to, and that is free. So our Hoopla is free, and the public library, and our Tumble Books program is free. So they're all free, and it just takes for you as parents to just click, and get it set up, put the apps on wherever, and then let those children go. One of the things is Harry Potter. I'll just tell you a very quick story before I leave. So I grew up near a national park, and we were having my parents' 50th wedding anniversary, and we had some people come from Canada. He was the deputy treasurer of under Trudeau, and his wife, and they were there. They had two girls. One was about 17 and one was about 14. And the mom was sitting at a picnic table out in the middle of the woods, and she was reading Harry Potter to those girls, and those girls were sitting there listening to her read Harry Potter. I was shocked because we just don't see it in the States. And I said, well, do you always do this? And she said, well, yeah, everybody does it. Now, those girls, I think she has her master in social work now, the other one's a doctor. But that mom knew the secret so that those girls could get through college like that. I mean, they have to work hard, say at medicine, they have to do, but they have this language bank. So I would urge you all to just put a push, because your children will benefit. And I know many of you already read, but if you have friends, talk with them, because the more that we can raise it, the more that everyone benefits. So I have some handouts I will leave on the bench right there. One is, thanks to Jim Trelease, who has passed away. It's Why Read Aloud to Children. You can read that. Because I know we sometimes get tired of the screen. This is questions parents always ask about reading aloud. These two things, so I'll put them right here. And this is Hoopla, the Hoopla link, and this is our Tumble Books link. So the two that you can use for free, and they're absolutely free. You don't have to buy any books. I would say go for the classics. Go for the like Harry Potter. Go for Winnie the Pooh. It sounds crazy. Go for Beowulf, Treasure Island, all these. So if they're really young, maybe get some picture books that are but high, much higher level. And you know what? You're going to enjoy it as much as they will. Thank you, and thanks for all you do.
Thank you, Juliana. Okay, let me share the screen again. Oh, where did it go? Hold on. Where is it? Bring all to front. Okay, we don't need that. Where's the other one? Here we go. Sorry, you don't need to look at the schedule or the spreadsheet. Hold on. Where is it? Does this ever happen to people where your window is missing? Okay. Oh, here we go. Thank you. Okay. Okay, why is it so small? Is this it? What the heck happened to it? Do you know what's happening? Sorry. I don't know what this is. Oh, like there's the, I don't understand what's going on. It should be,
All right, look, guys, stop sharing.
yeah.
I paused. Oh, there you go.
But that's the other, I have two
Shit. So,
windows. I have two like Chrome windows, and that's another one.
Yeah, but just close it, because it, like, it's not showing anywhere when you open, that's not there on the right. And you want
Let me just, I'll
Sorry.
open it again.
there you
Okay,
go.
let me do this. I'll just, okay, here it is. And let's share this. Okay, I think. Okay. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, so moving on. Okay, thank you. Conferences, they're in a couple of weeks, March 17th to the 21st. It is minimum day week every day, so 1:10 is when school is dismissed. They'll be scheduled soon if they're not already. So look for those invites. This is for many of our families. It's not for every single family. My understanding at this school is that it is for most families. But the November conference was like for everybody, so everybody could get to know the teacher and ask questions and learn about their students. This one is for most students. But maybe there's most students are doing something in their day that where a conversation with the teacher and the parent could kind of help the student succeed. And if that's not the case, then there won't be an invite. If you want to have an invite and you're like, well, I want to make sure I get an invite, just reach out to the teacher. That's fine. You can schedule that, but that's coming probably very soon. At the conference, the teacher will share the report cards. Today is actually the end of trimester 2. So over the next several days, the teachers will be finalizing the report cards. And then I shared these hopes and dreams with you. So you could go into the conference, as an active participant. You just don't have to sit and listen to the teacher. So if you have any questions, please bring them. These are some questions that I think you can choose if you like these questions, you can bring them to the conference, think about them and then share these answers or talk about it with the teacher. What are your hopes and dreams for your child? I think that's really good information for the teacher to have. What can you do to support your child? What can the child's teacher do? What can your child do? It's not just, your child succeeding is not just all on them or all on the teacher. It really takes a lot of different people to help a child succeed. And so having that conversation with the teacher can be really helpful. So that's kind of my suggestion about conferences. The next slide, I'm going to go into more about report cards, but any questions about conferences? Okay. So the next slide, these are standards-based report cards. And there's a lot of information on these pages. And so I'm going to kind of go over the report card in more detail so you can kind of understand, oh, this is actually what all these things are that, maybe you know this, but I think it's important to, especially for a lot of kinder parents that I see here, or even, some older parents, there's just a lot of information that maybe it's just helpful to understand it more. So this is the report card. And this is a kindergarten report card, but all the report cards are formatted the same. And I'm really talking about the format, not so much like if it's kinder or fifth grade or whatever. So let me kind of zoom in. Okay. Hopefully that's legible. Okay, so at the top, this is just, the school information. Your child's name. Over here are attendance. We're in trimester 2, so you'll already have had scores in trimester 1. And here you'll see your absences and tardies here. And zeros are great. But of course kids get sick and but we want to have as few absences and tardies as possible. Down here, this is kind of explains like what all of the symbols mean. So a lot of the report card, it does like 3, 2, 1. So, and these are standards-based report cards. So these are standards-based. So every teacher, whether it's language arts or math, they're teaching to the standards. Whether it's curriculum that our school has adopted or a project-based learning unit that the teacher created in our professional developments, or a lesson that they are developing on their own or with their teaching partner. They're all based on standards. And so by the end of the year is when students should be meeting these standards, understand all of these standards. And so a 3 would mean, okay, they've met this standard. Maybe they met it in trimester 1, maybe trimester 2, but the goal is for them to meet it by trimester 3. Partially meets the standards is a 2. So that would be, for a lot of the standards, they're kind of taught throughout the year. So it takes possibly all year long for them to master the standards. So some kids might be getting 2s, and that is perfectly acceptable. Kids are on track if they are partially meeting standards. And then 1 does not meet the standard. This is, where's my cursor? 1 not meeting standards. This is for kids who might be struggling with that standard in some way. And then for some of the areas, we give a P for participation, but low work completion, or an N for no score or no participation. So let me kind of go over this first section. This first section is life skills. And I'm realizing, okay, I've only seen these once back in November. I'm realizing, I believe that these, do people know, are these? I should know this, I apologize. Yeah, these are, yes, so these are not like the Common Core standard. These are what our district has adopted as like, these are life skills that we believe students should have to be able to be successful at school. I honestly can't remember if teachers scored at 3, 2, 1. They did. Okay, thank you. Okay. So even though they're not necessarily a standard, you kind of understand like a 3, like, yes, they know this well. 2, they're still learning it. 1, they're not. They need to learn it a lot more. Thank you for that clarification. Then we've got the reading and language arts standards in all of these. And these are not every single standard, but they're the essential standards. And so a lot of the language arts standards are kind of integrated throughout the year. So if you're if you're teaching about punctuation, of course, a punctuation standard is going to go with writing a topic sentence standard. It's going to go along with a speaking standard because you have to speak and listen, a listening standard to this language that kids are developing. And so all of those are taught throughout the year, and they could be, easily 4 different standards. And so a lot of the language arts standards, getting a 2 at this point in the year is perfectly acceptable. But maybe they're doing really well with punctuation, but they're struggling with like writing that topic sentence or capitalization or something. So they might, be getting a 3 and 1, but, in that same lesson that they're doing, they're still struggling with capitalization. So they're getting, maybe they're getting a 1 or a 2 in that, even though it's kind of their work that they're doing is the same work, but the standards are different. Does that make sense? Okay, math is a little bit different, and I'm kind of generalizing, but math, it's more of a cumulative lessons. And so, they might be, in kindergarten, they might be like, counting numbers from like, 1 to 20 or something like that. At the beginning of the year, okay, they've done that. Or 1 to 100. Okay, they've done that. That's done. Now they're moving on to like place value. The difference between the 1's place and the 10's place. And so, okay, so some of the math standards are, they're done. They're not going to be teaching them again. So by trimester 1 or maybe by trimester 2, the expectation is that they should be meeting that standard. So you will probably see more like 3s in math possibly than in language arts, because language arts is more of a progression throughout the year, whereas math is like, okay, we're done with that, we're moving on to this, we're done with this, we're moving on to this. And then sometimes you might see blanks, like, well, why isn't that being taught? Because we haven't gotten to it yet. So there might just be blanks, or maybe they put a slash or something like that. Teachers do it differently. And so it might not happen until trimester 3. But by the end of the year, like all of these little cells should have a number in them. Any questions about math or language arts? Okay. And then the other additional subjects. So we've got social studies, science, PE, visual and performing arts, technology, and then programs. I'll explain that. But all of these other things from like technology up, these are things that, like Mr. Sahagan with music right now, it was Ms. Kaplan with art, Abe, or the teachers. Teachers teach PE as well. Plus we have the dance classes, which is part of PE. And so teachers also score based on that, but we don't break it down by standards for these. There are standards for all of these subjects. We just don't break it down. We just kind of give an overall score. And then this last part of programs, this is for our students that are receiving special ed services. So depending on what services, well, I should say not all, ELD is not special ed, I apologize. But from RSP to speech, our special ed services. So you would know, and that would also come, then we get a score for that. And that would also come with their report card plus their progress report from their special ed teacher that they would get. And then the ELD is for students who are English language learners, which is not special ed, but it's students who know 2 languages or more. And they will get a score from that as well. And then the end of the year, is the child promoted? Pretty much universally, yes, we don't really retrain students. I don't really believe in it. And for lots of reasons that I'm not going to go into, but if you want to know, I'll talk about it. So they'll be going on the next grade. And then the last part is the comments for trimester 1, trimester 2, trimester 3. And this is just the blank page because that's just what the teachers write up. Any questions about the report cards? Okay, hopefully that was useful. Okay. And then the last thing I want to talk about that kind of goes along with conferences and report cards. So I would, certainly this is a conversation you could have at conferences if you want, is growth mindset. Have people heard the term growth mindset versus fixed mindset before? Okay, I know a lot of our teachers use it. I don't know if it's universal throughout all of our classrooms, but this basically, there's just a brief definition. The belief that one's abilities, intelligence, and talents can be developed and improved through effort, learning, and perseverance. I think this really, I read, Carol Dweck, who is a Stanford professor, she wrote probably the definitive book on growth mindset, I don't know, over a decade ago. And I read it and it really changed the way I thought about working with students. So I'll give you my son as an example. My son is now almost 21, but he was, in elementary school, he was smart. He always did well. And I always, and I'm an educator, so I know how to talk to a kid and motivate them. And so I would always say, oh, you're so smart. Good job. Great job on this assignment. And I'm so proud of you. You're so smart. And I would use the word smart a lot. And he then transitioned to middle school. And in 6th grade, he was on the honor roll and they had a big, huge celebration. And I was so happy. And I'm like, you're so smart. Good job. And then in 7th grade, he started struggling. And in retrospect, I realized the struggle wasn't that he wasn't smart, but that term smart is a fixed mindset. Because kids who feel smart, and I'm generalizing when I say this, but I would say people who feel smart, they're smart because when they have an activity to do, when they're doing something, when they're learning something, it comes very easy to them and they get it. Oh, I feel smart. I know how to do this. The teacher's teaching something. I understand it. I know what to do. But then what happens, and it happened to my son in 7th grade, all of a sudden, the teacher was teaching something and my son didn't get it. But that conflicted with what he believed about himself because he believed he was smart. And so now his internal message was, wait a minute, I'm smart. Smart means I get things. I'm not getting this. So that must mean I'm dumb. And that became his internal message to himself. And then I read about this and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm saying the wrong thing to him. I've been saying the wrong thing to him all these years. I shouldn't say he's smart. I should say, you need to be working hard. Oh, you're in elementary. I wish I had said, oh my gosh, you're doing so well. That's because you're working really hard. Great job. Like that's what I should have been saying because that promotes a growth mindset. Because when you have kids that are like, well, I'm stuck, I don't get this, then their internal message is like, oh, I just have to work harder because that's what my mom or dad said all along, or my teacher said all along. So this is the gift instead of the donuts. This is a document that basically of things that you can say to your kid when your kid is like struggling at home. Maybe they come home and you're like, how was your day? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm not good at math. That's a fixed mindset. because maybe they had a lesson where they didn't know what to do. So the growth mindset, what you can say to them is, oh, what are you missing? Maybe, it's not that they're good at math. Maybe they, went to the bathroom during the middle of math class and they didn't they missed like the directions or something. Or maybe they just don't understand one concept. Help them, like, okay, what is that one concept? Oh, let's work on this. Maybe they're saying, I give up. I'm so frustrated, I give up. Well, let's use a different strategy. There's lots of ways to do one thing. You don't have to do it just one way. And there's a whole long list. One thing that I like, which is not on here, the power of yet, the word yet. You could add, this is like, I would say, have this posted like somewhere in your home where you're like, it's easy access, because then you could say like, maybe it's on your refrigerator, wherever your kid, like, and maybe in their bedroom. So when they say those phrases, you're like, oh, let me look. Oh, okay, mistakes help me learn. Okay, you made a mistake? Okay, mistakes are good, because that's the way we learn. Honestly, when I like reflect on my life, I think, wow, when I've made like mistakes and I've learned from them because I reflected about them, that's when I really grow. That's when I really like, oh, I'm not going to do that again. But when you just do something and you did it right, you don't really give it that much thought. And so, did you learn from it? A little bit, yeah, but you didn't know a lot more from it. But the power of yet, that's an easy one, because remembering all these phrases in the moment when your kid is frustrated and they're saying, negative things about themselves, it's hard to like, oh, where's this document? It's in the other room. I got to address my kid right now. But the power of yet, if the kid's like, I give up. I don't understand this. You don't understand this yet. Whatever they say, you could just add the word yet onto it. I hate writing. You hate writing, but eventually, well, I don't know. Okay. Well, you gotta think about how to add the word yet. You're not good at it yet. Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Sometimes you gotta think about it for a second. You don't use their exact wording, but you use some wording and you just add the word yet onto it, and then you kind of help them through that. And so as you're learning about how your student is doing in a couple of weeks at the conferences and you're reviewing the report card, then a tool that you can go back to like support your kid is, I would say, growth mindset phrases and the word yet, which is like the ultimate mindset phrase. So I hope you find that useful, and that's the meeting. So please let me know what you want to talk about. This is principals input. Scan this. It leads you to a Google form. What do you want me to talk about at these monthly meetings? I think I have enough scheduled for the rest of the year, but if somebody like gives me some input that's like, oh, that's a really good one, I might, shift my schedule around. And I don't have any for next year. So, maybe you give me a topic and I'll talk about it next year too. So anyway, I'm got these for everybody, and I'm going to put them right here. And then you've got Juliana's documents right here. And that's it, everybody. Thank you so much for coming.